Also, apologies from our chair, hence you see a different face at the front here, and I'll do the best I can at short notice in running this meeting. So first of all, I would like to ask Peter Eden if he can open with a karakia, please.
Yep. Tēnā rā koutou, ko haere mai ki tēnei hui. Ki te whakarongo rā korero I tēnei rā. Me karakia koutou. Whakatakatahau ki te uru whakatakatahau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, hi aki ana ki te arakura, he te o, he hoka, he hau, ti hei, mauri ora. Mauri ora, everybody.
Thank you. We're definitely not used to your speed.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Really, normally give us time to catch up.
I got halfway through it. Oh, yeah, I'm going to...
That's kind of, sometimes we do it all together, sometimes somebody leads. In this case, somebody led. So
I'll remember that.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. And Lauren, if you would like to start and introduce John as well, that would be really great.
Perfect. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming in today. So we have someone joining us by the name of John Simmons. So John will be our independent expert during the hearings process, which will be happening in the next few months. Just thought it'd be really important to bring him in and obviously introduce him to everybody. John, if you'd maybe just like to take a couple of minutes and introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Sure. Kia ora, everyone. And thank you, Lauren, for that intro. It's nice to be joining the Hawke's Bay team again on another project, or a similar project to the last one, which was your regional pest management plan. So hopefully I can add some value to the process. I think having familiarise myself with the partial review that you're going through, this will be hopefully a fairly straightforward procedure, but time will tell, see what the submissions bring. Just by way of a bit of background, I've had an involvement in biosecurity since about 1990, having come out of a land management background, and it's an area that I've thoroughly enjoyed. Been involved in a lot of activities, both nationally and regionally. Spent most of my working career with the Waikato Regional Council and its predecessors, and so pretty familiar with the Regional Council process and certainly the biosecurity aspects of it. I live in the Waikato, just out of Hamilton. Got a few interests like fishing and forestry and a bit of hunting from time to time. And I work with a colleague, Peter Russell, and we do some biosecurity consulting work. So that's why I'm probably sitting on this Zoom or this team meeting with you today. So thank you, Mr. Chair. That's probably all I have to say, unless anyone's got any questions.
Any questions? Either from the wall? We've got two people on the wall, as you can see, so no questions there. I see heads nodding, shaking, no. So we'll get into the paper then, shall we?
Thank you. Peter, do we need to go through any other admin before we go into it?
That's fine. We typically have a conflict of interest, but perhaps we should address that.
Yep. Is there any conflict of interest that we need to address? No, we haven't?
No.
Okay, then we go into...
So, can you, if you're talking, yes, probably microphone a bit closer. Thanks.
A bit closer. Is that better? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, getting into the documents for public consult. So along with the attachments for the BWP this time around, there's obviously been quite a few papers sent through to you just for that comes down to the public consult document that will go out to the public and also be available on our website. It's got a section 70 and section 71 analysis of the proposal. This is a massive requirement for the Biosecurity Act and obviously for the councillors too. We've also got a template for the letter drop that we will be sending through to the PCA members, and attached to that as well there is the cost allocation report as well as cost benefit analysis, which is supposed to give you some context as to the analysis and also the proposal. So in the interest of keeping this meeting, I suppose, on track today, I'm quite keen not to go through any, say, punctuation or grammatical errors within the documents. Those have been picked up by other parties. but I'm really keen to try and get an overview on how do you find the pack for readability, and would you be prepared to approve this to go to council for public consult? So any thoughts would be great. How did you all find the document set?
I do have some questions and some in regards to the consultation document.
Okay.
We're just going through it now. I've actually made some notes on my computer, so.
Great, okay.
Because I think there is an error in the consultation document, and also the consultation document is a very good document. It's got all the information,
Yes.
but I'm just questioning whether it's too large.
That's a really good question. So initially it has been cut down. So when this was first given to the comms team, I believe it was over 30 pages long,
Yeah.
and now we've cut it down to approximately 12. So in terms of then trying to match the proposal up to the Section 70 and 71 analysis, I don't think we could go any smaller, because then we are starting to lose context as to what the consultation document has got. So which parts did you feel really dragged the document?
Well, it's all very good information.
Okay.
All that is actually really helpful.
Yeah.
But the thing is, what we generally find that unless there is an executive summary, so that people actually can choose not to read the whole document, but still get the information in there.
Okay.
People who are supposed to read this and give us feedback, I believe, are our landowners. They really need to understand.
Yes.
They, in theory, should take the time to read it, but whether they do is another question. So if there is a shortcut that we can make for those who are time poor, and maybe, because let's face it, everybody these days reads headlines.
Correct.
And that social media has done that to us. And I don't want to miss the opportunity, and I don't think my fellow councillors either, that just because of the amount of words that they're actually not actually going to read it and therefore give their submission. I know that the questionnaire at the right at the end is very short,
Yes.
which is really good.
Yes.
So if there is a way that we actually can have an executive summary and then point them to the survey, I think that may be a quickest way for us to actually get penetration, so to speak.
Okay.
That's just my suggestion. Okay.
No. Can I get some more feedback, from other BWP members on what you think as well about that? Because it's really going to come down to, obviously, there are those touch points within the proposal that we do need to make sure that we've covered, just from a Biosecurity Act review perspective. So if we were to say shorten something, then just do an executive summary, there would then have to be another document available elsewhere that you could then go fully in depth and obviously into the weeds from there. So I'm just trying to think from a readability and a time point, is that something we're able to do? So what's your feedback on that?
Mr. Chair, I've got a few comments, if you would
That'd be great. Yes, please do.
like to hear. I'm listening to what you were saying, and I think there is a need for the two documents. The full document is available for anyone that wants to take the time to read it, but the questionnaire and sort of I don't know what the proper title of it is. It's sort of a promotional pamphlet, but it's a short form which I think summarises the whole issue pretty well, and will probably be the sort of document that most landowners will respond to. If they want to get more detail, they can delve into the online document and get the detail. In terms of the actual proposal, I think it is pretty much complete, to my mind. There's one deficiency, I think, which would add value to it, and that is I think it needs to have some examples of what the funding impacts are likely to be, and I suggest it would be useful to model maybe 4 scenarios of, say, a sheep and beef property, a dairy farm, a horticultural enterprise, and a residential property, to compare the status quo in terms of the the funding impact as opposed to the new model. I don't know whether the proposal encapsulates any dialogue that's been held or conversation that's been held with the Department of Conservation. I know they're not a significant player in the proposal, but I think for completeness it would be useful to have some observation or some comments from them. And maybe the social impacts of the proposal, particularly in relation to possum impacts on residential gardens, might be a little bit underplayed. I think that could probably be emphasised a bit more, because that's sort of one of the big impacts from possums on your wider ratepayer population. So those are my sort of initial comments, and I think the questionnaire document is ideal for getting out to the communities that are likely to be affected.
Great. If I could just make a comment about the funding analysis, John, I completely agree with you that there does need to be some sort of modelling shown when it comes down to rating impacts, and obviously 4 different scenarios. We have to be really careful here, though, that we're not, I suppose, stepping on the toes of the funding and revenue policy review that's going to take place at the end of this year. So we've had to, effectively, we can't determine what the funding split will look like until that review has taken place. So what we've managed to do within the cost allocation report is to give a range. So obviously giving a rating impact change and what that will potentially look like. But we have put a caveat in there that states that we're not able to give full funding analysis details until that review has actually been finalised. So so it's...
But I guess if I were a sheep and beef property with, say, 500 hectares, I'd want to know, that's it's going to impact on my bottom line. So I want to know, is this proposal going to impact my rating by X dollars or Y dollars?
Yeah.
And similarly, because of the big shift to residential, or to the general rate, does the residential property owner find that their rates are going to go up by a substantial amount or not? And I think you can probably write plenty of caveats around a case study, but it's just at a particular point in time, what's the impact on my rating bill right now if this proposal was put in place? And it's not committing to, I guess, that being your finite rate in 2024 or whenever the proposal's introduced. It's just an indication of this is the sort of way this proposal might impact on my rating bill.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, with the LTIP, that can all be determined within the long-term plan. So it's really been a very interesting conversation to not actually give, as much as we'd like to give a rating impact example, those specific numbers we can't actually give out at this stage until we have completed that final review. So I hear what you're saying. It is a bit of a chicken and egg situation. So I'm hoping that with the information that we've been able to provide at this time, that will be enough to cover off the review until we then go into the LTP review, which is hasn't been scheduled for completion yet. But it's a really difficult conversation to have because I can't give dollars and cents at this stage.
Can I jump in there?
Actually, Jacqueline is first, and then you can come in, Craig. Jacqueline.
Yep.
Thank you, Chair. So just following on from Yerif as well, Lauren, I think, I'm always going to be going on about the plain English, and I think there is a real credit to you in adding a lot of subheadings which make it much more clear to follow the document, which is lengthy, but with those subheadings it really helps, and I really do think that looks much better in paragraphs. The only one I really think that needs changing still and is so important is page number 1. So reasons for the proposed changes. I think you could make that so much clearer. That page number 1 is really summing it up, really, why we're doing this. This is so important. So if you could actually make that a little bit more clear, maybe you don't need this one pager that Yerif was saying, just to finalise everything. If you make that clear, reasons for the proposed changes, I don't know, bullet points, number 1, number 2, just to make it a bit more clearer, because that really is what you've got to grab that attention straight away. And I think on the left-hand side, what is the proposal? Really clear, what happens next, but the reasons need to be a little bit clearer. So that's just plain English from me.
Thanks, Jackie. Full credit to the comms team for the amazing job that they've done with the proposal. And we can have a chat offline when it comes to trying to maybe tidy up page 1 in terms of trying to really make it more bullet point. But thanks, Jackie. That's so.
Thanks.
Right, thank you. Thanks, Jackie. That's great feedback.
Craig.
Thanks, Jeff. A few points. Just a quick reminder, please, Lauren. In the paper itself, as I wandered through it, I wrote a note down. It said we're doing this because we've decided to go something like to a large contractor model or a single contractor model. Or it uses words to that effect in our paper.
Yes.
Can you just remind me how we got just the abbreviated version of when did we decide under what analysis to go to the large contractor model, as opposed to, I don't know, a bunch of small ones or something? I just can't quite remember that leap. And then a few other questions I have.
Okay.
Just the headline on that question, just remind me.
Sure. So there was a Section 17A review that was conducted, I believe, in early 2020, if not 2019. Yep. And the results that came out of that was, there is a potential point of failure when it comes to the current monitoring obligations that HBRC have got. So looking kind of at the analysis, the large-scale contract model was one that, made the most sense. And also following in from the lead of other councils as well that have got very successful large-scale contract models occurring at the moment with, massively reduced RTCs. It was an opportunity for us to really modernise our approach too.
Chair, perhaps if I can just drop in there. Councillor Foss, look, I think the point you're probably referring to is, are we proposing to disadvantage the small operators over the large? That's probably the real question. No, we're not. We haven't committed to running one single contract over the region with one contractor or running 20 with 20 contractors. Those are details that we haven't got to. So the language is not supposed to represent that we've chosen a particular path for the actual operationalising of the policy and the implementation. That's a subsequent discussion that we'll have in the LTP. And if we need to change the language, we're very happy to, because we haven't made any conclusions and are we way off those sorts of decisions yet.
Okay, well that's great. If someone just does just a glance through the documents on that, and to be fair, look, I'm having another look at the paper now, and I can't quite recall where I got it other than para 6. So, but anyway, look, if I grab that impression, someone else may also do that. So that's cool. Lauren, could you also explain to me the correlation between the two documents there, the cost allocation report and the consultation document, just where they marry up? They have a parallel universe, or they're intrinsically linked?
No, so if you have a look at Section 70 and 71 analysis, they are basically what that is. That's a table that really breaks down what we've done in the proposal and just making sure that we touch those points of the Biosecurity Act when we do go through a partial review. So the reason that I've attached the cost allocation report in the CBA is because there is a lot of funding analysis parts of the analysis that need to be referenced elsewhere. And since we no longer have them in the proposal, to make the document a little bit smaller and obviously easier to read, we've then attached these as extra attachments, which will be available on the website. So it's really just a full overview of the numbers and obviously funding analysis. So that's why that document exists.
Sure, no, I understand all that. So has someone done the idiot's test of those documents? So to pick up kind of where John was coming from earlier, do I think it's worth 65 million, I think, over 10 years? Do I, if I'm out there down at Ongeronga or somewhere, having been part of the possum control program or whatever, do those numbers just pass kind of a common sense check? And I presume they're robust, they've come from somewhere. but they are some very large numbers in there, and there's a net benefit of 2.2 mil, I think, over 10 years or something. Just they are things where people can grab onto to try and test us on. And look, they can be 50, 100% wrong. It's it's a 10-year and I think a 20-year plan. So just giving us confidence that those numbers are realistic. And then the point, I'm very much in John's camp of the, regardless of how big or small the document is, I've got 27 things in my in-tray. Yes, I'll glance at this thing because the submission's due tomorrow. My questions are, what's in it for me? How does it impact me, either a farmer or this new audience that we're evolving here, the urban people who will also now be submitting on a general rate. So again, sitting a moment in their chair and their busy life, and because this is not the most singular thing in their life, but it will be important, obviously. And then that narrative, as Jackie was saying, just others are going to feed off this document at some stage. What does it mean for me in Napier, urban Napier, Hastings, or somewhere like that? And yes, I know it's confined to possums, as you say, somewhere in the document, but it's just, we may as well try and get it right from here on out. My other point is, I wrote a question down about how does this reconcile with the Revenue and Finance Review, but you answered that. You're in a kind of a rock and a hard place, I suppose, but you're maybe just harden up on your solutions or your parameters, because you don't have to dictate anything, but you've got the status quo. Then you could do a theoretical 50-50 or a theoretical 100%. At the end of the day, these are judgments the council's going through, as we started to yesterday, in our wisdom. So I think, it's never going to be 130%. So, you can make some calls somewhere, at least, the parameters, worst case or best case scenario, however you look at it. In the paper, again, you've said you've already started some pre-consultation with some groups, I think. Who have you done that pre-consultation with? Is that just the list you gave us at previous meetings, or is it specific?
No, so it's been groups such as Federated Farmers. There have also been some forestry groups we've touched base with, MPI, I know...
Osprey.
Oh, yeah.
Osprey.
Okay.
So we have managed to touch base with quite a few external groups, which has been really good feedback. And the feedback we have got from those groups is really positive. So, that's quite encouraging, I believe.
Yeah, Chair, perhaps if the team can talk about the CBA. Councillor, I completely take on board the notion of adding in John's suggestion of a table, and we'll do that. I think that's wise, and we can accommodate that, as you say, with some sort of scenarios and drop it in there just for people to get a sense of what this means for them. And look, in relation to the revenue and financing policy process, what I'm hoping is I can get this topic on the agenda. I had hoped that you might have discussed it at your last workshop. That was what I'd understood we'd agreed to. I'm going to get it on the agenda as soon as practicable, so that we can, with more confidence, go out with a little bit of a bookend around where we think the council thinking is on this particular topic. But absolutely, I think we've definitely had a table that says, well, across those the three farming enterprises and an urban property, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, that's fine. I don't think we have a formal policy, but we have an intent of user, abuser, beneficiary pays wherever possible with the various systems that we have. And so, that's the context. We can reference that, but maybe we'll catch up and allow you to do your thing before July 1, hopefully. My final point is just on your recs in the paper, 2.4. I'm not sure we can do these things as a working party. We can't agree that this thing will be publicly notified on the 1st of July, etc., etc. It's up to the council to say that. We can recommend it, and many of those things, but I don't think we can make these decisions.
You are making the recommendation. So Para 2 starts, the working party recommends that council does those things. So
Yep. I'll go get coffee. You got me on that one. Okay.
1-0 to Ian.
No, it's 7-2.
This isn't
Is he that good?
This is not football.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I've just got a comment in regards to that was mentioned about Department of Conservation and the changes to the Wildlife Act and how that may impact on this proposal going forward. Because obviously, and I was in a meeting with the doc the other day with the policy team in regards to the changes that are potentially coming up that Minister Allen suggested, and then how does that impact on this proposal? Has it been taken into consideration in those with regards to those changes?
I would love
Look, I can jump into that because I'm pretty tightly connected to the DOC conversations through the biomanagers group that I'm part of for the sector. Yes, DOC, under Penny Nelson's leadership now, are looking across all of the legislative frameworks and have concluded the Wildlife Act, given it's 1953, is the most antiquated and unhelpful piece of legislation for managing particularly protected species from their perspective. So they're undertaking a process to have that review done. That's going to take quite some time, and obviously has to then get through various government legislative, processes. So it could be some years before that's promulgated and in effect. Where that would come into play is when we're at the stage of operationalising the policy and figuring out, well, how do we do the delivery work in 1 July 2024 and beyond? How is that practically going to work, and what's the relationship with the department, and those borders between where the PCA and Dockland might be. So that's all work to come. The policy doesn't, it won't prevent any adaptation or incorporation of the legislation that DOC provides. I think that may just provide potentially more opportunity for more activity from the department, assuming they've got the funding to go with it, rather than it being an impediment to stopping us doing what we want to do. So it's really difficult to sort of give you an absolute crystal answer, other than to say that we, as a sector, will be very closely connected to those conversations because of this sort of challenge, as well as the fact that we've now got the National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity and the requirement for us to give effect to that policy in our laps. What are all of the legislative levers and tools that we'll have to do that? So it's a little bit vague, but I don't sense anything in the conversations I've had with DOC that's going to make it harder for us. It's going to make it a hell of a lot easier.
Okay, yeah, that was mainly because obviously it's going to change that biodiversity act or impact on that, because there's a lot of different conversations happening in regards to around the effects. And I think, since 1953 when that act was put in place, obviously it's 80 years ago, and things change, technology and all that stuff. So around that, and then just the whole definition, as you said, with the act, I think it's going to be overhauled majorly, and then that impacts on this future planning. So just interest, because we've had I've had a conversation, policy team and around that, and that pest management come up in the conversation, and the biodiversity, and they talk about impacts. So it's just interesting to hear your thoughts on that, because that's long term. Obviously, that review of the policy and that legislation change is going to impact. So as long as it's been addressed, I suppose, because it's nice to put in the plan, and then you put the plan in, and then next minute there's a review of the legislation and it changes the whole.
Exactly what needs to change, what needs, then do we have to go through the whole process again? It's, good question.
Okay, excellent. I've just got one mainly for common knowledge. We're proposing that forestry gradually will join the scheme. Is that to appease the forestry industry? If we go too hard, they may put a block up and we have a fight on our hands. Is that one of the key reasons?
No. So in regards to, that's the implementation phase. So it's basically saying we can't do it all at once. It's a rolling front. We could actually, I did pick up on that, possibly reword that to be slightly clearer. But it's not about easing them into the program. They're in it whether they like it or not, assuming this proposal goes through. It's more the process of rolling that out. We can't do all areas in one go. It's going to take a 5-year period to roll through that. So that's, I guess, the easing component.
But from day one, they will be rated?
100%.
Yeah. Okay, no, happy with that.
And we've had this discussion with the forest sector, because we knew, we've had at least twice that we've talked to the forest leaders about this, knowing that this is quite a significant change for them. And I was really encouraged by the conversation with them, particularly the last one where they get their social licence question that they're having to face up to at the moment with a large TB outbreak in the region and the finger being sort of pointed at them for good and bad reasons. So they're very interested to be a good corporate citizen and do their part. They're very connected to and supportive of the biodiversity ambitions that this work would bring. They get that biodiversity exists in production forests as well, and they've got to play a part to support, protect and manage those. What we are talking about with them is, well, how, as we operationalise the policy, it doesn't automatically mean that we have to roll in and have our contractors go through their forest operations independently of them. They may have good, solid, robust contractor models that we can pick up and assume, or be satisfied that their models are delivering the right outcomes and have them fit into our program, given that the contractors will be more adapted to and familiar with work inside a full production forest and all the risks that come with that. So we're wide open to having a conversation with them to say, well, practically what makes sense to deliver this, but be really clear, as Mark was saying, you're in this program, it's not an option, you can't opt out, you're in it, but how do we deliver it in a partnership that ensures that we get the outcomes that we all want here.
Okay, good. No, thank you very much for that. John's got his hand up. Craig, you're... John.
Yeah, I just made a note in relation to that in terms of if a table is prepared to model the funding impacts, it might be a good idea to add an extra line and put a, nominal 200 hectare plantation forestry into the mix as well to show what the impacts on their rating will be.
Yeah, that's good.
It's just a way of, I guess, reassuring people that this change that has been promoted is not going to disadvantage them substantially, and in fact the region will benefit as a whole very substantially from instituting this contractor model.
Absolutely. Craig, you had your finger up?
You want to rephrase that, mate?
No. You went like that, so you're supposed to put your hand up when you want to speak, not your finger.
Oh, right, there you go. Well, just two things. Probably for Ian, is what you said there true for the carbon sink type forests and the kind of pan-pack type foresters? And then the second point is, as this rolls out and let's say it's relatively unchanged, the improvements we've talked about, who wants this to fail under what basis? Who's going to come out diametrically opposed to whatever this proposal is, do you think?
Look, good questions. We've spoken to the production forest industry, pan-pack, Rania, those types of operators. We haven't specifically targeted consultation with the carbon farming forestry community, I would be interested to know where and how we would make connection to them. But it's certainly a conversation that came up in our engagement with the forest industry is, how are we managing these carbon sinks? What's the proposition for that? It's certainly something that one of the local contractors has raised with me directly as well. And look, I think practically and operationally, there are ways to manage that, manage for that, particularly if we're taking a model that has a spatial view and a view that targets possum habitats. Clearly, large-scale production forests one of the primary habitats for possums, so those areas would be targeted and control, put through them as required. So that answers that question. We haven't specifically engaged with that industry, and I don't know what their views are.
Okay. Can I suggest that their views? I think you said, where do we find them? Look around the room, and on our rate-paying base, you'll find a few. and Craig Little knows of quite a few. And the reason I asked the question is your PAMPACs, etc., are part of the community and need to understand that ongoing social licence. Many of those others who've just bought large farms and planted them up don't. You know, it's a one-off purchase. They bank the credits, and it's an additional. They may see it as an additional cost to them. As opposed to the wider benefits that we see. So I do see some mischief happening there. And also there's some large tranches of land up the coast, particularly in multiple ownership, of which I'd suggest it'd be worthy of touching base with a few of those trusts. And if in doubt, wondering who they are, just ask the members of our regional planning committee, and they'll head you in the right direction to maybe just seed any issues there, because we don't want that. You know, I think what most of us saw is a very ill-informed debate and around the TB situation happening, and diverse opinions within trusts coming out and making a problem for us, or making a problem for the environment, I guess. So I'll leave that there, but if you could just re-engage with a couple of those large organisations, both domestically owned, and you'll find a couple of large foreign ones, please.
Yes, great feedback, and certainly we'll get about doing that. In terms of your second question around who wants this to fail, well, that's probably a really difficult question to answer. I mean, I think you might have identified one potential party. I guess the people who will be most interested in this are those who are perhaps seeing the biggest change in terms of cost, potentially. But given that we're looking to decost or take cost out of the rural environment to an extent, and have the urban ratepayer pick up more of the costs, I think the challenge for us is going to be, and Jacqueline made the point, you know, getting those key messages right at the start. When we're selling it to our urban rate-paying community, you know, what's in it for them and why would they care, which is why I've been at pains with you at the governance table to have this really oriented about biodiversity ambition. And I would be very surprised if urban ratepayers, if they clearly understood and we clearly articulated the value of this work to our regional biodiversity ambitions, that there would be many people opposed to it, unless, of course, the costs were exorbitant, which for the individual, but I don't anticipate at all they will be. In fact, I think people will be probably quite happy to pay for a rate that's targeted to a tag that's biodiversity oriented, and I suspect might be keen to pay more if they knew that it was achieving good things for our taonga species in places. So I think that's a real challenge for us, is, you know, potentially the urban community might go, well, why are we suddenly paying more for managing possums on people's farms? You know, so we've got to get that messaging right. So that's one risk to us, as well as, like you say, people like the lock it and leave it foresters who might just go, well, we don't care. And I don't know whether they do. They might absolutely care and have a social licence they want to maintain.
Yeah, no, it's good comments. And once again, it resonates with me as the discussions we had yesterday, that actually if we as a community want to improve our environment, we can't just expect our landowners to do this. We actually need to, the demands are coming from our community as a whole, and we all need to take responsibility for that. And I think we as a council, like yesterday was a great day for me. We got that acknowledged, and our councillors around the table agreed to that. So that's really good. So that's excellent. Okay.
I just got a point. It's just following up to Councillor Foster's and just around that engagement, and then obviously the example that previously happened, and I suppose if we give the live example, Tātarakina, and then what happened there, because obviously there was a 10-year court case that mana whenua obviously objected to the type of control, and so if we're looking at, or you're looking at how do you mitigate risk, then that's potentially a risk, because obviously for Māori, and I suppose if we look at the Pampac Forest and who owns the majority of Pampac Forest, and and then the checks and balances that come up when they talked about control, because obviously they didn't support some types of control, and that I suppose PMPEC had to address the issue that was raised and put another control measure to accommodate those landowners. And if you're talking about RPC and those groups, because they'll have the same questions asked, so the control will most probably be a factor that needs to be put into the equation, because with the group, some people agree with some types of control and some don't. So if you're wanting to mitigate risk, well, you need to address, or some say that it needs, because that'll come up as a sticking point, as you no doubt see with government when they're doing different types of controls throughout the country for possums. There's some major factors in there just to be aware of, because I think that would come in, especially from a mana whenua perspective.
And look, I think they're very wise sort of points for us to be cognizant of. What I would say, look, I came literally from a meeting this morning with the new GM Operations North Island for Osprey, and we were talking about this very issue. Osprey have got challenges with land access for their programs of work. What's missing for me is a partnership between ourselves, DOC, Osprey, maybe MPI, that brings together a kind of integrated, coordinated delivery of possum suppression across the nation. And it starts with, whether it's with multiple owned Māori blocks, forestry blocks, or European title land, well, why are we doing this? Who cares? Because there are multiple drivers here. And for me, the big hook in all of that is our ambition for our Indigenous biodiversity and the impact that possums are having on that. So if we can get clear on the why, why are we doing this, why do we care, it then opens up a conversation to talk about the how, and not the how today, but the how in 10 and 20 and 30 years' time. So how do you get suppression to the right levels, and then how do you maintain that so that we don't have this ongoing boom and bust cycle of money spent for knockdown, people walking away, numbers building up again, and we're back to, control methods that may not be desirable for people, for some parts of the community. So how do we get that model right? And then the other thing is, and like there's work happening in that space now, what's Plan B beyond 1080? What's Plan B beyond the area of application of toxins? What's Plan B beyond brodifacoum, which is a bioaccumulating toxin in our environment? How are we going to do this control in a way that people are comfortable with and isn't effective, so that we can get the suppression right? That work should be happening right now, because we're going to need it in a decade's time when we can't use some of these tools.
And so that's just a important point, I think, because then you've just got to go through the last 10, 20 years, 2 decades of control, and then the public and community feeling in regards to some of that corridor that's obviously raised a lot of issues in the community. And I'd take Councillor Foss around the cost benefit, because I know with Osprey and their costing structure, when they're looking at how they cost it out and the types of control, obviously it's a lot cheaper when you use 1080. I think it's 4 times the cost of ground control. So yeah, technology's coming in, but then there's some people that feel real hot on that topic.
Yes.
I think what we'd want to do is we move, like I say, into working out, once we've got the policy across the line, assuming we can get through and get this done, at the point we're starting to think about how do we operationalise it and what's the package as staff we're bringing back into the LTP discussion, which is going to start at the end of this calendar year. That's the point where, I think we need to be very much sitting alongside, groups like yourself and others to say, well, look, how do we see this working? What's the plan? What are kind of the risks? What are some of the things that people like and don't like, so that we can factor that into a model and take it forward that by and large has support, rather than people kind of fighting the way we want to do this. That would be the ambition.
Good. Any other comments, questions? Yes,
Hello,
Mark.
Mr. Chair. I just wanted to get some clarity around the approach for our comms. So we have the proposal. We're sort of stuck with the Biosecurity Act requirements, hence it being quite long. The way I did the previous regional pest management plan was had a proposal of which people can go and find obviously quite detailed information. the other step we took, and we will take in this process too, is doing tailored messages to the different audiences. So it's not like we're just going to send out the proposal in itself. We're sending out a letter to all the current members within the PCA program. We're going to be doing releases on both Facebook. We'll do some news articles. So they have a whole comms plan sorted. And that's really about getting the why message through. So people can easily either submit on it based on the information they've already read, or they can then pick up the proposal and read further or get even more detailed information from the other supporting documents. So we're not just sending out the proposal in itself, just to make that clear.
Okay, that was good. And I did see in the papers there was a covering letter, which I think you signed.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
So that is the letter that will be going to all PCA members. So pretty much just letting them know that there will be changes to the current PCA program, letting them know when we're open, obviously, for consultation, and just where to obviously do your submissions. So, yeah.
I just had a thought.
Can I give a provocative thought?
Go to it.
Just on that consultation thing, I just wasn't sure. You've got so many letters going out, etc., and you've got your core group, and then the larger audience who have interest in this. Can I suggest that we set a target of consultation return to basically keep the heat on ourselves? So rather than just ticking a box that we're consulted of sending stuff out, we actually add a bit more integrity to that of, I imagine your close group of early consultations will be engaged anyway, but just set some kind of parameters so we can chase down and just learn along the way what may or may not be working, because there's obviously going to be more of this in this space down the line, but particularly those who the different forestry participants we just spoke about, and then there's the general the farming or rural community who are already contributing or part of the PCA. And we've got to remember what is missing from the document. It doesn't really need to be in there. But in the Section 17, it was found very, very wanting, and we were a large part of that. And so, so let's just try and make sure this is as successful as possible. Thanks, Chair.
Just seeking clarification. So, are you saying prior to releasing the proposal, go back with a draft to those people who've already talked to, or get it out and then go back to them and say, let's step you through this so you understand it, and we're keen for you to provide it? Is that?
Yeah, sorry, maybe explained it. No, just send it out as your process. But, towards the end, we're going to have a meeting. And so after July, there's going to be a paper wrapping up, and we consulted X, Y, Z, and we sent out 1,000 letters or something. What will be interesting is actually, and we had feedback from, 20%, 30%. Particularly those sectors who now something's different happening for them, or a new charge, or they're going to be paying the bill somewhere else. It's just that, basically just trying to give some more validity to the consultation process, which in this sector, the public sector, tends to just be one way. And I'm just trying to force all of us to work, to encourage all of us to work a bit harder to get that engagement and therefore ownership. The land or the waters will be smoother the better we do that.
The comment is heard. It's not easy in this day and age, but I was afraid that you would set some targets. Fortunately, you haven't.
No, I can't set targets. It's actually easier in this age. And the hard part is how we get the narrative right for the appropriate audience to encourage them to want to open an envelope, fill out a form, and send it back to us or click the button. I know it's hard, but we've got to do it and do it well to give it longevity.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Any other comments, questions? Otherwise, I think we come to the part of the meeting. By the way, I have failed, because it wasn't in the agenda, we also have to approve the minutes for the 5th of May. It wasn't in the agenda, so I looked over it, but it's in our paper. So can we accept the minutes of the 5th of May in common consent? You happy with that, and Jacqueline? Okay, great. Thank you. Good. Then we come to today's recommendations, and Craig has already pointed out that the way he read it was wrong. So we'll read it as the words actually are here. So have I got a move? Is there any appetite to actually have the recommendations 1 and 2 bundled together to make it simple?
Yeah, of course.
That's good.
Yeah,
So
I
Craig,
move
would
all
you like to move?
1 through 2.5 inclusive.
Correct. Yes. Jacqueline,
I move.
seconding. Great. Excellent. Any discussion on this? No discussion, so it's really good. All in favour say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. So that means that we're actually going to recommend to the Hawke's Bay Regional Council the following points. When does this need to go through a committee before it actually goes to council?
It's just asking the question, do we need to get that on the EICC agenda? Do you need to double debate this?
Yeah.
No, we don't. So
Don't have to?
no, we don't. So with the BWP's recommending today, we're able to go to the 29th of June council direct.
Okay.
We don't have to report back to the ICC.
And equally, if I may, it's to hit the deadline as well. So if we were to go to EICC, then it pushes the whole consultation
Entirely,
process out.
yeah.
So we don't have to and prefer not to.
Yes.
Can you just let the chair know that, because he has a strong interest in not double jeopardy but double debate. He often makes this point. I'm sure it's not a biggie, but this is why we've set up as a working group. But just flag it early.
I'll contact him. I'll put
Not
something
Thanks.
on my action items.
I'll give them a call.
Great, thank you.
And the reasons for it, okay? Very important.
No dramas. Thank
That's
you.
good. Well,
Sorry, before we close, we'll just do a quick run through as to the next stages of the process, just so everyone can have clarity on kind of our date schedules and things like that. So today we have recommended for council to adopt proposal. 29th of June will be when council hopefully adopts the consultation. We then have consultation open from the 1st until the 31st of July. Submissions are scheduled for the 17th of August. 18th of August, we have the BWP deliberations, and then we'll be tidying everything up and taking everything through to the 28th of September council for adoption. So that is our time frame at the moment. And that's, cutting it quite close in terms of obviously that being the last council meeting for the end of the year. But we're confident that we're able to get this through.
So just a question for me that maybe governance needs to answer is that we sit in safe territory in terms of the election timeframes and this decision?
Yes, so there's a philosophy, it's not the law, that no significant decisions will be made close to the election time, and typically that's the end of September is viewed as that space.
Okay. Good.
8 days after that's not okay, but that day's fine. Righto.
Yeah. I just thought I needed to ask the question so you're all sort of comfortable with that.
But it's a valid question. But if it was actually resetting some rates or something like that, we shouldn't go near it. But it's not. It's just continuing this process.
correct. Exactly. Yeah, and that's good. Okay, good comments. Anything else before I ask Peter to close the meeting? If not, good. Peter, would you please
Oh,
close?
yeah, kia ora koutou, and then I'll go through, we can close the whakataka and I'll slow it down. so nā mihi. Whakataka tahau ki te uru, whakataka tahau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. Ihi aki ana ki te arakura, he teo, e hoka, e hau, ti hei mauri ora.
Thank you.
Nā mihi.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Vice Chair, thank you.